So it's not really possible to summarize the life of someone so incredible, but I'm going to try. I think every person who speaks today is going to give a different version of Carol and probably repeat some of the same events in different ways, but that was the beauty of Carol, is how everyone knew her in so many different ways and how many different facets there were to her. So I guess I'll start at the beginning. My mom was born the oldest of 3 children here in Windsor, to 2 very Ukrainian parents, deeply rooted in the Ukrainian church at St. Vlad's. Her grandparents were founding members, and from a young age, she was shaped by a strong sense of family, faith, duty, and work ethic. She was proudly Ukrainian, and our family were pillars of the parish. We were always in Ukrainian dance, and Mom was the unofficial and truly unbeatable hairdresser. She styled our hair with care every morning and insisted we dress up for church. As a mother myself, I still relied on her to do my kids' hair for recitals and for photos, and to find them the very best shoes and dresses. She grew up immersed in music and culture. Her parents were photographers for the local light theater, Windsor Light Opera, and she grew up singing show tunes and loving performance. Later, she directed choir herself and carrying that love of music forward. She also loved Motown, growing up so close to Detroit, shopping at Hudson's, occasionally sneaking over, and having family dinners in Hamtramck. From the very beginning, she was curious, joyful, and deeply social. She was bright, capable, and a social butterfly from the start. She defended her siblings, did her homework, practiced piano, carried the violin for Mike, and approached life with an energy and light that was unmatched and contagious. There was always a story, always a sense of momentum, and always something happening when Mom was around. That energy led her into education. She studied French and Russian, once dreaming of traveling the world, but ultimately realizing that children were her calling and that she wanted to invest her heart in them. She worked hard to begin her teaching career and met my dad during that time, supporting him as he found his own path into engineering. When she was just 22, my parents married. Mom famously used the money pinned on them during wedding dances to plan a camping honeymoon, always the thrifty one. And camping would remain a theme throughout her life. Even later, after her divorce, she always found her way back to nature, whether in Bon Echo Park, September getaways, or beloved trips to Harbor Beach to see Pat's friends and family. And she traveled solo. She was not afraid. She began her career in Toronto, where my parents built a life in the Scarborough Bluffs. In time, they had 3 children, me, Kate, and Talia. When Dad was laid off, the family returned to Windsor, where Mom had very clear criteria for home. North of the tracks, walking distance to the river, and sidewalks. She found that home on Ford Boulevard, where she lived for over 40 years. It became the heart of our family and a chosen family beyond it. Mom spent countless hours on her porch, reading, entertaining, chatting with neighbors, or handing you something to carry or putting you to work. She worked best under deadlines, demanded a lot of her kids and her staff, and somehow made you feel capable of meeting her expectations. She was also famously late, especially to church, and we like to think that this may be the first time in her life she was early. You always knew when Mom was arriving. She had a distinctive walk, heels heavy and confident, and whether you were at home or at school, you could hear her coming before you saw her. Ford Boulevard was full of bowling nights, parties, celebrations, and connections. Mom was proud to be a matriarch, not just to us, but to many. After my parents' divorce in the early 90s, Mom did something extraordinary. At a time when few working women were single parents to 3 children, not only did she do that, but she created stability and possibility for us. She kept the family home, she worked relentlessly and advanced her career from core French teacher to vice principal and eventually principal. Over her career, she worked in over 14 schools. She was a true educator and a fierce advocate for children, especially for the underprivileged, finding boots, hats, coats, and food wherever there was need. She championed breakfast programs and believed education was an act of service. She was known as the fixer, sent into schools that needed healing, pride, and purpose restored. At home, when she became a single mother in her 40s, she didn't just manage, she flourished. She tinkered tirelessly, always improving her home, learning woodworking, rebuilding, painting, and creating a place that felt alive and welcoming. Her house was her sanctuary, her vacation, and her future. Later in life, Mom found her partner, Patrick J. McDonald, who opened her heart in a new way. With Pat, her love of food deepened, and together they made their home the most welcoming place imaginable, full of shared meals, laughter, and warmth for us and many of our friends and family. In her later years, Mom also found companionship with John, who gave her what she loved most, company and shared experience. Through John's connections, she discovered a whole new social world, delighting in fundraisers, Grosse Pointe neighborhood parties, and children's events. Her spare time was happily consumed with shopping and planning for their time together with her grandchildren. And to this day, I've barely bought my own children a piece of clothing, certainly not the beautiful dresses that they're wearing today. She stayed active and committed to her health, race walking daily on the waterfront, and proudly participating in many local races and marathons. As we grew up, Mom, alongside our beloved Bob and Dito, raised us, celebrated us, and carried us through every high and low. When I had children of my own, I realized I was becoming her, always looking for ways to give them joy and create moments. She embraced her role as Baba with total devotion. She would drop everything for her grandbabies. They loved their Baba time because she always played with them and cooked food and knew they would she knew they would love, and served it in playful ways, calling pasta Christmas trees or snow with the cheese. Her house became a place of warmth, imagination, and care. Mom cultivated lifelong friendships and real connections. Many of her colleagues, staff, and high school friends are here today. She had the rare gift of instantly liking people and being instantly likable in return. And if she were here listening to this, she would quietly remind me everyone's full name and an incredible amount of detail being each person in this room. So I'm sorry if I didn't get it all right. She found joy in everyday moments, coffee on the porch, a walk by the river, or a simple conversation that somehow became meaningful. People felt more capable, more seen, and more valued after spending time with her. What truly set Mom apart was her outlook. She always found the good, rose above differences, and helped mend relationships, and never held grudges. She took risks and encouraged us to do the same, refusing to be defined by a single rule. If I could say anything to her now, it would simply be thank you. Thank you for your generosity. Thank you for your drive and your warmth. Thank you for teaching me to see the good in people and choose the high road. Thank you for loving my children so fiercely. And thank you most of all for being my mother. I am blessed beyond words. The best way you can honor her is by carrying forth her legacy of kindness, generosity, purpose, and that unmistakable, contagious joy. May we each leave here today carrying a little bit of Carol with us, and may we share her light wherever we go. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Carol's middle daughter, Kate. Our mom lived such an incredible and expansive life. She loved so many people and places. She did so much with her life that it's unlikely anyone's speech would ever do her justice. But here's the second, and we're going to try. I'd like to call this Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. There's a word my sister Laura used to describe our mother: magnificent. Magnificent is defined as impressively beautiful, elaborate, or striking, great in deed or exalted in place. Let me tell you what it was like to have a magnificent mother. My earliest memories of Mom are fragmented but vivid. Lauren and I visiting her in the hospital, watching her hold Talia just after she was born. Halloween in our Toronto house, where Mom made us handmade raccoon costumes. Standing on a chair with her in the kitchen in Ford Boulevard, baking her favorite oatmeal banana chocolate chip muffins. By the time I was old enough to really remember, she was everywhere, powered by boundless energy. She loved power walking on Riverside Drive in her Brooks outfit before work. She loved Valentine's Day mornings, when instead of rushing us out the door, she'd sneak downstairs early, set the table with pink and red chocolate hearts, and make us breakfast. She loved Christmas, decorating the tree while listening to the Nutcracker, and she kept a secret stash of sour cherry blasters in her desk at St. Maria Goretti. She listened to Michael Bolton on repeat on the CD player in the dining room. We loved buying her anything purple amethyst because it was her birthstone. And of course, who could ever forget her signature red lipstick? Mom was brave, daring, curious, adventurous. She was hungry to live life fully. She volunteered to coach sports she didn't even play, volleyball, shot put. She ran the school choir because the kids needed it. She volunteered with the walkers and runners around Essex County, the Detroit Free Press Marathon, the Windsor International Film Fest, at her church for Carousel of Nations, and the Windsor Essex Food Bank. She was brave enough to go camping alone, to go to concerts, movies, and even travel to Cuba alone. She was brave enough to race across Lake Erie to Put-in Bay in a sailboat in a storm with 2 other moms. Or to race walk an entire marathon on a whim. True story. On family vacation in Florida, Mom vanished for a day and came back wearing a t-shirt that read 50-kilometer ultra marathon on the beach. She had spent the entire day walking an ultra marathon powered by 1 Diet Coke and sheer determination. As a single mom, she went back to school, earned her qualifications, and became a school principal. She was proud to have worked in 14 schools as a teacher and an administrator, and while she loved them all, she always held a special place in her heart for the schools with the greatest need. She loved to say, "Where there's a Wilk, there's a way." This was usually said moments before doing something wildly overambitious, like demolishing a kitchen or dangerously using power tools with a level of confidence that defied logic. Not long ago, she sent us a photo of herself with a cut lip from electric hedge trimmers. We gently reminded her she was old enough to have middle-aged children. But she could never slow down. She broke her toe twice on vacation from stomping around at a lightning pace. Twice, again. She used the collections of canes to help her get around after her hip was replaced. She walked fast and powerfully with a tread we could recognize anywhere in her house. I also think it's time we talk about her driving. As kids, we used to fight to sit in the front seat of the Toyota Tercel. I am not sure why, because the prize was always the same: holding Mom's hot mug of coffee with no cup holders while she drove a jerky manual transmission through the streets of Riverside. Later, we also gained healthy respect for the handling limits of the 1994 teal green Ford Taurus wagon, which she drove like a race car while screeching around corners to pick us up late from George P. Vanier or St. Joe's. She was a bit of a menace when she was driving, but I think she liked it. Mom also taught us that it was possible to rebuild. After the divorce, after losing Pat, in the face of devastating loss, she was endlessly resilient, finding new hobbies, joining a widow's club, bowling, bocce, and even taking ice skating lessons. She went on dates, she made new friends, she kept going. She believed in us. Talia heading west for school and work, Lauren teaching in Korea, me playing volleyball in Europe, Later, she chose Taiwan, teaching kindergartners in 100-degree heat as her retirement adventure. I hold a very tender place in my heart for the times it was just us. The time between the divorce and Pat, going to plays with her and watching every frame of reference film imaginable. I also treasure her visit to me in Spain. When I hurt my foot playing volleyball and my dreams of continuing were over, she came to bring me home. But first, she arranged to travel with me across Spain, making sure I left with beautiful memories, not just painful ones. Whenever I was hurt or broken, she had this amazing way of knowing exactly how to comfort me. Becoming a grandmother softened her in the most beautiful way. She was pure joy to Del, Elia, Claudia, Isla, and Davy. More than once, my sisters and I laughed at how gentle she had become because, let's be honest, she did not brush our hair that gently when we played. Beautiful dresses and elaborate hairstyles became the hallmark of any visit with Baba. Overstuffed closets full of sequins, ribbons, and tulle are reminders of just how deeply she loved our little girls. And I'm also so grateful that in this season of her life, she found John. After everything she had been through, we watched her question if she could ever find love again. John was God's quiet answer, the perfect gift, a man who adored her and treated her with kindness. She fit so naturally into his family, organizing birthdays and anniversaries, traveling across the states to visit loved ones. I am eternally grateful for the time she and John shared together. But my favorite version of you, Mom, was when you were completely chaotic and hilarious. Here's another true story. The first time I ever flew with you, Mom, I should have known I was in trouble when you showed me your carry-on, a medium-sized cooler bag embroidered with the name Walter. As I finished my water bottle at the security line, I reminded you to check your bag for liquids. You were shocked to learn you could not bring fluids on the plane. An important note, this was 2015. You frantically pulled out a 6-pack of V8 tomato juice and said, "Quick, you have to help me drink these." And you began shotgunning a warm vegetable cocktail beside the security garbage can. Inside the bag, we found salt and pepper shakers, a steak sandwich in a glass container, and I swear, a full-size steak knife. We had to throw out most of the contents of your carry-on. We teased you for the rest of the trip, and Walter became legendary. You always giggled to yourself whenever I retold the story, like it was a prank you had pulled to get us permanently banned from flying. That humor and chaos is what I will miss most. You were silly and fun and magical. This feels like the right moment to thank you, Mom, for the greatest gift you ever gave me, my sisters. Lauren has your beautiful face and your intellect. Talia has your dimples and your charm. And we all have your mannerisms. We used to tease each other whenever one of us did something that was just like Mom. And trust me, we still will. But now, being compared to you feels like the highest honor. When we are together, retelling stories about you, it feels like you have only just stepped out of the room, like you could be back any second. And these moments now feel holy, sacred, magical. These beautiful, intelligent, kind women are living vaults of everything that was good and funny and fun about you. You poured so much of yourself into us that of course it took 3 of us to contain you. I am endlessly grateful that I do not have to walk this path alone. So thank you, Mom. Mom, it feels like we could have lived 10 lifetimes with you, and it would not have been enough. Being loved by you was a whirlwind, and it was exhilarating. Even now, though it's impossible to put it into words what it meant to be loved by you, I am reminded of your favorite scripture that says, "And now these three remain, faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. And it is your love that remains. Your love is everywhere. It is in your granddaughters, in your family, in your friends, in the man who cherishes you, and in the hearts of three very lucky girls who got to call you mom. To everyone who has offered hugs, meals, messages, babysitting, flowers, donations, or quiet companionship, your love has been overwhelming and deeply healing. Thank you. Mom, you were a miracle. You are a wonderful mother. You were magnificent. I will miss you for the rest of my life, and I will look for you in the next. Thank you for being our mom. I love you. I love you. We love you."
I'm going to invite John to come up and speak next. He's nearby. If not.
Well, first of all, I want to thank everybody for coming and honoring Carol. She had so many friends, and you're an example of it. They were always full. And I don't know how we're going to fill in the future, but I'm certainly going to think about it. Yeah. I've had to write this down because I'm not sure I would have remembered it all. But I'm John Toll, and I've been Carol's committed partner for the last 8 wonderful years. Carol was the love of my life. She brought a light and love into my life at a time when I did not believe it was ever again going to be possible. She had a habit of making the impossible, or the possible, impossible. That was just her nature. Carol and I both have been widowed for some time, but we met in person in 2018 at the former Roma Cafe. And any of you know Carol, the Roma Cafe is in the Eastern Market, and kind of out of the way place, but it was just her place there. We met online, which is a tribute really to Carol's sense of adventure and constant search for happiness there. We spent that first evening, we spent the next 6 hours talking and learning about each other. From that point on, frankly, I was hooked on Carol. I just couldn't get her out of my mind. And it thus began an 8-year relationship that's been some of the best 8 years of my life. Carol has been a major part of my life and the life of my family and my friends and children. She quickly became a second mother to my children and grandchildren. She quickly adopted, and was adopted by my family here, and also in Tennessee, believe it or not. There. Carol, one of them's here tonight, Carol thought the Tennessee contingent spoke kind of funny. but that did not stop her from accepting and ingratiating herself for them. Carol's smile and loving ways was just irresistible to everyone she came in contact with. As I said earlier, we both have been widowed for several years and found a relationship with each other that we never thought possible. We were fortunate that both of us were retired and we had time to spend with each other and learning about our lives, our children, our grandchildren, her children and my grandchildren became hers, and hers became mine. It was a perfect relationship in so many ways. We both had an extensive circle of friends and acquaintances and family, which really enriched our lives tremendously. We were able to travel to many places. Carol really enjoyed this. New York, which was her favorite, Chicago, which she loved too, Santo Domingo, Mexico, Miami, Punta Cana, and last but not least, Tennessee. She thought they spoke funny down there, but that was okay with her. She learned how to understand it. We were fortunate to be able to travel fairly extensive. I've been involved in some charitable work with a foundation that allowed us to go to many places that, and particularly in New York, that she loves so much. With respect to family, Carol has absolutely no fears. She embraced not only her family, but mine. She loved entertaining family and friends. She tirelessly gave of herself to everyone. Family dinners and gatherings just will not be the same without Carol. Warm smile, loving nature just cannot be replicated or replaced. There is no question that me and everyone who came into contact with Carol are much better off today than not having known her and loved her. Carol's passing leaves a huge hole in all of our hearts and lives. Now, Carol was also a woman of faith. She loved her Ukrainian heritage and church. She was also faithful to the Catholic Church of both Canada and the U.S. Sometimes she had to drag me to church on Sunday, but she was never deterred. I always had to go no matter what. And I have to admit that my faith has been shaken by a God who would take someone like Carol so early in that time. And hopefully I will get over that. Carol has 3 lovely daughters, as you know, Lauren, Kate, and Talia. All of them followed Carol into their teaching profession, for which she was immensely proud. She was also thankful for the 5 beautiful granddaughters that they gave her, and was determined to be a major force in shaping their lives and continued growth. She loved them dearly. Carol deeply loved her son-in-laws too, Joe, Mike, and Jade. She knew they were the fine young men, and they would lovingly take care of her daughters and granddaughters. I share her love for each of them and believe they will love and nurture their wives and daughters. Carol particularly loved her 5 young granddaughters. She had waited a long time to become a grandmother, and she did not plan on wasting any time at all. She clearly had plans, and she was using all of her energy and help to help them grow into beautiful, educated, and self-confident young women. I am sure Talia, Lauren, and Kate will continue that effort. Carol also became a loving mother and grandmother to my children and grandchildren. Carol was particularly loving of my daughter Nicole, who is here this evening, her husband Dave, and my grandson Noah. She thought the world of them and became their mother and grandmother. From a very personal point of view, Carol helped me to be a better person. She helped me to become less judgmental, more forgiving, maybe a little loving more. And without Carol, I'm not sure any of that would have happened. At this point, I'm not sure how I will go on with the rest of my life without Carol. I will try to remember our deep love and hope it sustains me. Carol, I love you and will never forget you and your unselfish love of all of us. Love you, Carol. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. John, that was me. Well, my turn.
And just in case I can't get through it, I've appointed my husband to take over. So, as most of you know, I'm Carol's sister, born just 18 months after her. Carol, our brother Mike, and I grew up in a tight-knit, loving home with our parents, Nettie, Natalia, and Mike Wilk. For the first 14 years of our life, I shared a bedroom with Carol. This is when the story of the two of us really began. Carol was always a voracious reader, and from a young age, she loved reading chapters to me every night. I have fond memories of us underneath the covers with a flashlight, with her reading and me listening. If we didn't have any books, she would retell stories that she had read earlier or learned at school. It's foggy, I can't get it. We did this long after I learned to read on my own. Somehow it was more fun listening to Carol tell her stories. Sometimes describing her classmates or telling funny anecdotes about her day. Through her detailed narratives, I think I really got to know her friends and teachers, even if I never talked to them myself. Our tradition of her describing her life to me never ended. Our family spent almost every Sunday and summers with our Baba and Dito. Our Aunt Chachi, okay, and Uncle Tony, our mom's brother, and our cousins, Mary Ann, Tony, Joe, and John. This time together helped us forge a tight cousin bond that never ended. Some of our best childhood memories involve spending time at our grandparents' beachfront cottage in Amherstburg along Lake Erie. As kids, we had the most fun sleeping in a garage while the cottage itself was being built, with no TV and indeed no electronic devices. Carol and cousin Mary Ann entertained us with their stories and their antics, while our Baba made our meals over an open fire, and the adults helped to build the cottage and maintain the property. Somehow I never understood when Mom and Dad always said that owning a cottage was a lot of work. We can now fast forward to our high school and college/university days. Mom and Dad bought an old, dilapidated Volkswagen Beetle that was simply beautiful to us. By then, Carol was in university, I was in nursing school, and Mike was still in high school. The plan was for Carol to have a car to drop Mike, and then me, and then drive to university. Since I had taken driver's education but needed to get my license, Dad asked Carol to teach me how to drive the manual stick shift Volkswagen. On one such driving lesson, without going into any painful details, Carol and I got into a verbal dispute over her instructions. I ended up walking home, leaving Carol to explain to Dad what had happened when he came home from work. I never did learn how to drive a manual transmission. And Carol and I often laughed about that experience in the years that followed. Of course, her recollections of that experience were never as accurate as mine. Okay, moving forward, Carol and her husband moved to Toronto. I was working as a nurse in Windsor and drove to Toronto to see them every weekend I had off. By then, her two older daughters, Lauren and Caitlin, were born. It wasn't until I had kids of my own that I truly understood why Carol waited for my arrival every other week so we could both take her two toddlers grocery shopping. On one such shopping trip, Lauren tried to stop the conveyor belt at the checkout, but it was stronger than the 4-year-old Lauren, and it ended up trapping her hand under the stationary part of the checkout. The staff were wonderful and quickly brought a bucket of ice chips to reduce the swelling of that screaming child's hand. The ice came from the seafood display. So she smelled like fish for the rest of the way home and after that. And my car smelled like fish. After another grocery shopping trip, while Carol was buckling Lauren into her seat, I assisted toddler Kate into her car seat. Kate was learning how to walk, and her Baba bought her a pair of lace-up boots, aptly called Baby's First Steps. Baba loved how sturdy and solid the walking shoes were, and she purchased a pair for all of her grandchildren that were learning to walk. On this occasion, Kate decided she didn't want to be strapped into the car and began kicking and squirming. She managed to kick me in my forehead, causing a rather large purple bruise on my there, and was hard to explain to my coworkers the following Monday. I worked in Emerge and we saw a lot of bruises, and so they didn't believe me. Have you ever had memorably crazy experiences with someone that you could laugh about for years? Well, for Carol and me, that seemed to be the norm. On another trip to Toronto, Carol, admitting she needed a break, asked me to go to the Marvell School of Hairdressing to get our hair cut. While their dad watched the girls, my sister and I embarked on this adventure. The Marvell School offered training in hairstyling and coloring for aspiring hairdressers at a very affordable rate to the public. Sorry, it's not nice to drip while talking. Our first clue should have been when we asked to sign the waiver promising not to sue them. Well, a quick 6 hours later, Carol and I left, and boy did we get our money's worth. Carol's hair was purple. My hair was Lucy Ricardo red. And neither of us were wanted or were happy with our hair colors, but we laughed about that escapade for years, decades. On another visit, Carol and I tried to do some Christmas shopping at downtown Toronto. Exhausted after a full day of walking and shopping, we finally took the subway home. And two sisters could shop. Anyway, I looked around, we noticed the subway car that we took was almost empty, and we said to each other, what are the chances that at Christmas time we could find an empty subway car? The only other passenger was a woman who moved very uncomfortably close to us, staring at us constantly. After what seemed to be an eternity of being stared at, she said, "Excuse me, but I'm feeling pale today. Do you have any lipstick that I could buy from you?" We politely said, "No thanks." And that story always came up in our conversation when we talked about Toronto adventures. Over the years, Carol and I forged and strengthened our sisterly bond through laughter, by supporting each other, and by working together when required. With too many examples to list, it's over 70 years. I'm only 40. For her, it was over 70. I thought I would include a few of them. We were maids of honor for each other's weddings. Carol hosted our friends and family at her house the night before I married my husband, Gord. Unfortunately, she was so busy preparing for the rehearsal party that she never finished sewing her bridesmaid's dress. That meant that I had to finish it, working well into the hours of my wedding day. Yeah, I was not amused. Carol's 3 daughters were flower girls on our wedding. This is the youngest. The youngest, Talia, was 2 years old and made it known at the wedding rehearsal that she wasn't having any. And well, would not listen to directions, but instead rolled on the floor in verbal protest. We all held our breath the next day during the wedding procession as Carol walked her sweet and well-behaved daughter down the aisle. Later that day, she did, however, decide to throw her flower basket to the ground in protest during the group photo shoot that Uncle Mike was taking pictures of. Another example, Carol and I, with the assistance of our brother Mike, my daughter Julie, who now lives in Australia with her family, and Pat, who is to become her husband, had to empty our great aunt's house after she died. This was a bittersweet duty. However, we laughed when we discovered a bottle of Selena's homemade brandy. We called it mystery booze, and each of us took a sip to satisfy our curiosity about it. Well, more was fine. Actually, it wasn't bad. When she married Pat, my gift to Carol in preparation for her backyard wedding was to help her organize and clean her garage, basement, and house. Joining in the fun on one weekend was her future sister-in-law Mary and cousin Maggie. We all laughed, joked, and bonded while sweating in record heat that week. Carol called this wedding boot camp. With Carol taking the lead, she and I organized a trip for Mom and Dad to go to Toronto to honor the 70th anniversary of D-Day, of which our father was a veteran. Sorry. We three siblings, thank you, and cousins, Tony and John, were proud to join Mom and Dad there. This was an important recognition for our father. And Carol and I spoke many times over the years about how the effort to arrange travel and accommodations was well worth it. We were all tearfully grateful to be there. Okay, Carol and I, nicknaming ourselves Mare and Care, installed subflooring and flooring to convert our parents' living room into a bedroom with a hospital bed, hoping to keep our ailing father at home for as long as possible. Afterwards, we often joked with our dad, who never lost a sense of humor, that we inherited our muscles from him. Pat, Carol's late husband, as a Vietnam vet, was invited to Washington, D.C. to meet his Michigan congresswoman who wished to thank him and other veterans for their service. Unfortunately, Pat died before he and Carol could go, so I volunteered to go in his absence. This was a special trip for the two of us, and we laughed and cried, sharing this poignant time together. The Airbnb that she booked had only one bed, so Carol and I shared the bed, as we had so many years ago. Both museum buffs, we also unhurriedly toured as many Smithsonian museums, outdoor cafes, and exhibits as we could. Stuff we could do with husbands. No offense. Carol and I shared a passion for vintage, woodard, wrought iron patio furniture since we were young. Dad had several photographic assignments at large estates that featured them in their backyards, and once we saw them, we were hooked. Years later, we both collected a few pieces, although the real fun was always in acquiring them. For example, Carol knew that I had particular envy of a set of rounded sectional chairs in Carol's yard. One day, she saw a pair of them listed on a Craigslist ad, and in typical Mare and Care fashion, we embarked on our hunt to Michigan. It was a search that we laughed about for years. Firstly, the Customs Border Patrol guard sent us to secondary inspection where we waited for over an hour. I discovered that they don't appreciate people mistakenly getting into the Nexus line. We ended up driving for hours and getting lost, which we kind of did often, until we found the place. It was a rickety old barn that probably was used as a set in a horror movie. The chairs were covered with heaps of burlap, chicken droppings, and hay. And after digging them out, I paid the owner and we got out of there as quickly as possible. We laughed until we almost cried. And every time I see those pieces, it brings back good memories. And yeah, we got lost on the way back to the tunnel. My husband, Gord, and I hosted a wedding reception in our home for our daughter, Julie and Brett, the Aussies. And several of Brett's mates from Australia planned to attend. Julie told me she didn't want me to ask any of the guys to help with the preparations, saying, "They're on vacation, Mom." I didn't have to ask them. When I got back from the hairdressers, there was at least 6 Aussies, not including their wives and girlfriends, and Julie and Brett, moving furniture, arranging floral arrangements, some vacuuming, and any other number of things that needed to be done. Brett's friends all laughed and said, "Colonel Carol put them to work." And they happily cooperated. As one of the guys explained, it's hard to say no to Colonel Carol. Carol bore that new title proudly for the rest of the night. Carol and I had the difficult chore of making funeral preparations after the deaths of our great aunt, grandmother, her late husband, and both of our beloved parents. Together we chose clothing, other personal items, brought to the funeral home, spoke with the priest, and made other necessary arrangements. We often talked about how much we relied on each other to get through those tough days. It's going to be a real tough days coming forward. After the passing of our mom, who died at 97, Carol and I had the overwhelming task of emptying our parents' house and preparing it to sell. It was a house of love and memories. I'm sorry. I taught for 35 years. You're not supposed to cry in front of a crowd. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'll get fired. It was a house of love and memories, and our lives together were well documented by our photographer father. John was a witness and could attest to how we laughed and cried frequently each day. Carol was determined to honor the memory of our parents by donating as much as we could to Ukrainian and Syrian refugee groups, the food bank, and other charities, as we had done so many times before. Bear and care. Once again, rolled up her sleeves and got things done.
Carol and her dear partner, John, visited Gord and me in London as often as they could. The last time was about a month and a half before Christmas, when Carol had an appointment with an orthopedic surgeon and asked me to accompany her. They arrived the night before, giving us a chance to eat a great meal prepared by our son, Andrew, visit with each other, and look at pictures and share a few laughs. Carol was one of my proudest supporters, and she attended all my graduations and award receptions, and I was present at her retirement ceremony. Although we had busy lives and lived in different cities, we spoke on the phone weekly when our children were young. No longer the little girls who whispered under the covers with a flashlight. We talked almost every day via FaceTime or text once our children grew up and moved out. I enjoyed hearing Carol's stories and will miss them forever. Vicariously, I got to know Carol's teaching staff, her students, her friends throughout the years, her neighbors, the people she bowled with from the Ford Bowling League, people from Windsor Light, most of whom knew her parents, and of course, all about what her daughters, sons-in-laws, granddaughters, John and his family, and family members were up to. I will miss hearing about her various initiatives, such as the breakfast club she started at one of her schools, and countless other tireless activities. She loved going to the DIA, the Detroit Institute of Arts, attending concerts and plays, and taking tours of museums and other historically significant places. Through Carol's vivid descriptions and storytelling, I really feel that I was a part of it all. This is just the start of what I will miss about my sister. Those were all so beautiful. Everything that, like Lauren and Caitlin and everybody put together, of the snippets of my mom for the people who have been here to support others, not in light of knowing my mom. I've had so many comments about how much people feel like they really got to know her, and that is exactly what Carol, my mom, was, like just such a huge personality, and I'm so glad that you're all able to celebrate her with us. And for those of you who were at the church, I'm glad we were all able to kind of rally together and really enjoy some fun stories. And thank you all. So we can linger a bit and tell some more stories. And those of you who need to go, that's okay. We really appreciate all the time that you spent with us. Thanks for all the love.